All right, now we're trying with sound. More sound. Yes, sound? With sound. Oh, hooray! This is great. All right. I'm not touching a thing. Okay. Oh my gosh. Just one of me. Oh, good. That's good because I needed the clone army to stay chill for a little bit. All right. Okay. Wow. Thank you guys for being patient with that. No music. That's okay. I'm not playing the music right now. I don't know if the sound is going to play for my slide deck, but we're going to find out. If I just have to interpret for you, that's a little bit better than the clone army yelling at you. So yeah, thanks guys. I'm really sorry about that. Thanks for staying here. So all I have to say, let's talk about some folklore and some mythology and see where we go. So as mentioned, please turn in your tickets. There is a link in the chat. Seeker Within threw that in for me. Seeker is modding for me today because I have both chats from both platforms combined. So there's a lot of stuff going by quickly, which is awesome. Thank you guys for being here and participating. But if I miss a question, he's here to throw back at me, make sure I get somebody's questions answered. So best first experience of Gen Con. Hooray! I'm glad I could screw things up for you. So there's only up to go from here. Thank you guys. All right. So now let's go ahead and talk about folk tales and mythology and everything. And I need to give you a heads up too. This is an enormous topic. This could easily be a college semester or something, and we're going to do it in 2 hours. So it's going to, by necessity, be pretty quick, pretty high level. And if I'm probably going to skip something that is your favorite, and I apologize, but there's just not time. But definitely, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. And I'm going to try to give what I want is kind of give an overview, let you in on some in-jokes, let you be able to have tools to find other things, that sort of thing. So, alrighty then. So why do folk tales even exist? Not just in Japanese culture, but anywhere. Why do we have folk tales? Why do we have mythology? What do these do? So these actually serve an important social function. One of them is to explain natural phenomena or political phenomena. So there's a reason why the emperor gets to be emperor and you don't, that kind of thing. There's a reason that volcano is on fire, that sort of thing. So I'm sorry, give me 1 second. One of my monitors, if that's a term, just for some exciting reason rolled over. You know what? I'm just going to close you. Bye. It just rolled over to somebody else's Twitch stream, which I hope doesn't mean that my Twitch stream is down. Hey, Twitch people, I see you chatting, so you must still be here. So, okay. But yeah, somebody else is blowing stuff up right here, and it's very distracting. So I just made that go away. Okay. All right. So explaining natural phenomena or the political climate, explaining social constructs, explaining social contracts that we have, and providing moral education. And this turns into a cultural shorthand as well. So if I say, oh, he's upset, but it's just sour grapes, you know exactly what I'm talking about, even though that is a story from ancient Greek folklore. It's become a cultural touchstone. It's a reference point. It becomes a shorthand. What that means, though, is that if you didn't grow up with Aesop's fables in your culture, and if I just say, oh, he's upset, but it's just sour grapes, I sound crazy. It doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of stuff that you'll see in anime, manga, film, whatever, that Western audiences don't get and don't appreciate because they don't have those cultural references in their mind while they're consuming that media. So that's part of the reason that we're doing this. The other thing about folklore is it's just really fun. And in some cases really crazy, in some cases really fun. And I do another session. I have a book that's a retelling of Eros and Psyche, but in Vikings, with Vikings. And so I talk about Norse folklore, and I would get a lot of questions about, what is this? This is, what are these stories aren't bats, what's going on here? I'm like, hey, 8 months of winter and mead. Okay, this is what we got. So we didn't have TV, we told stories. So, okay, let's get started. Okay. Yeah, Camp Tiff, we should be getting feed right now. So if you can't get feed, please reload, because it should be happening. Although if you can't see me, that didn't really help. Somebody tell him to reload, please. Okay, so let's talk about why we're talking about this here at Gen Con. Again, I want you guys to be able to have some of those cultural references. I want you to be able to get some of the in-jokes. And then there's a lot of things that, for whatever reason, have become habitually translated in a certain way, which is probably not the best translation. And so hopefully this will help clear some of that up and you'll have a better idea of what you're looking at, even if the translation is fairly poor. So, all right, and why me? Like, I'm just a white girl sitting here talking about stuff, right? Like, this. I mentioned briefly earlier, I'm an author. It's one of the things that I do, and I work a lot with folklore and myth in a lot of my books. So these are just a handful of titles that I pulled out that have Japanese folklore referenced in them, in my stories in here, and I'm always very explicit when I'm referencing cultural origin, that my goal is for people to come away educated. I always am talking about where it comes from and what it means there. So that's how I'm able to share that here today is, I spend a lot of time researching it and looking at it. So, excuse me. So we're going to do this today in kind of two parts generally. The first is folk tales from Japan that you know, but you don't know that you know these as folk tales from Japan. So sometimes you'll see them produced in other ways or referenced in other ways. So let's jump right into this one with a really common category of folklore, the ring robe legends. In Japan, they're called Hagoroba Densetsu, but there is a category of this in nearly every culture on the planet, has some form of a woman comes out of the sky, out of the sea, takes off her wings, her seal skin, her something, so that she can swim or bathe. There is always some creeper who comes along and steals it and keeps it from her until she dances for him, becomes his wife, bears his child, something, and then she may or may not ever get it back, depending on the story. The seal wife, the swan wife, you've heard these in Western culture as well. And so one of these is an extremely ancient popular story in Japan. But just real quickly, the general version of that, the celestial maiden who is trapped and forced to bear children on Earth, is the basis for Wataseyu's manga and the later anime Ayakashi no Seres, which is a fun kind of a sci-fi spin on it where that is the distant past, but today a group of researchers are trying to use genetic engineering from her descendants to recreate and harness the power of that celestial maiden. And she is not happy about it, and that's where the story goes. So that is, what am I saying? That's the background of that particular manga. So let's jump into where that rest of that story is. So there's one really famous version of this, known as Kagehime. It's usually translated as Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. Kagehime is not the bamboo cutter, but the titles are fun. So Taketori Monogatari is the oldest narrative story in Japan. It's not the oldest novel. That's considered, Genji Monogatari, very famous novel. But this is one of the oldest narrative stories that we're aware of. And I'm going to give you a very quick rundown. So one day, a bamboo cutter goes out into the woods to cut bamboo. And if you notice in fairy tales, they're always bamboo cutters or wood cutters or something. It's because it gets them out away from civilization where stuff can happen. Interesting things can happen. So one day the bamboo cutter goes out into the woods to cut bamboo. He's poor bamboo cutter. He's childless, of course, all the tropes. And he notices that one of the stalks of bamboo is glowing strangely. So he cuts it down and finds inside a tiny little baby girl, also glowing. And so he takes her home and he's like, "Hey, wife, I brought you a kid. We have a child now." And they begin to raise her, and she grows very, very quickly. And very, very rapidly becomes beautiful, becomes talented, all of the things. And I'm trying to say I'm sorry, I'm trying to check the chat. It looks like people are taking care of the video issue. Thank you guys for sharing that amongst yourselves while I'm talking, but I'm trying to watch two things at once. The every time he continues to go back into the woods to cut bamboo, he will always find a bamboo stalk that when he slices it, spills out gold everywhere. So he's constantly being given bamboo stalks full of gold. So what this means, of course, is that he and his wife take this gold, they go to town, they spend all of this raw gold, which comes out of nowhere, and completely crash the local economy because the price of metal is devalued. And that's not how it works, but that's how these stories always strike me as they should work. So anyway, he and his wife raised this child. Now, this story is almost always told as set in the Heian era. And the Heian era, if you think about the multiple layers of the Jinihitoi kimono, this are just multiple layers of the silk robes, the tall hats, the long hair, historically documented 10, 12 feet of hair. This is the era where aesthetics defines everything, literally sets your place in society. So you are good at incense blending, you are good at poetry, you are good at playing music, and your skill at these aesthetics sets your sorry, I just saw Natalie's comment. I thought he was going to find additional babies every time the bamboo opened to be overrun by children. That's the little known sequel. Yeah. So their daughter, Kaguya, that they're raising, who came out of the bamboo, is the best at everything. She's phenomenal at everything. So of course, all the people want to date her, right? And so she's gently dissuading all of these nobles and all these lords who keep coming and asking her for her hand in marriage. And they'll say, well, I'll marry you if you bring me the rice bowl of the Buddha, or I'll marry you if you bring me the flaming robe of the fire rat, flaming skin of the fire rat made into a robe, or I'll marry you if you bring me this branch from this tree that grows jewels. And she sends them on all these quests. The guys all fake it. They bring her, and then she gently exposes each of their fakes with some really funny pun or put down. And that's how we're going. So yeah, Thumbelina is similar to this. You'll definitely notice similarities. Folklore has a lot of crossover. By the way, I want to mention, I took this picture of the bamboo grove. This is not a picture of a bamboo grove. This is a picture of the bamboo grove. One of several the bamboo groves, of course, but this is the one that I visited, so I have that photo of it. But if you look in the image on the right, and you'll see the multiple layers of kimono and the hair and the gentleman standing there on the right, this is the Heian aesthetic that this story is always told with. So one of the people interested in Kaguya Hime is the emperor, and she doesn't quite put him down with the pun in the way she does everybody else, but she does keep putting him off, so he's a little bit friend zoned. But they have a good relationship. They play games and talk and do the things. And then one day the sky opens, and this amazing, palanquin from heaven descends, and these fabulous people get off and come out, and they're like, Kaguya Hime, you are not a human. You are not a child of Earth. You are actually the princess of the Moon Kingdom, and you were sent here and hidden in this bamboo grove with these people so that you would be protected during this celestial war. But the war is ended now, and we need to take you back to assume your rightful place as princess in the Moon Kingdom. And so please, take this robe, and which will wipe your memories conveniently of your Earth time, and then return with us. And she says, okay, cool. But before I go, I need to real quick thank my parents for raising me, and I need to jot off a note to the emperor and thank him for being a good friend. I see this in the chat, guys. Hold the phone. Well, it's coming. So she writes a note to the emperor, and one of the things that she gets from the moon people who come to collect her is a pot of the elixir of immortality. So she writes a note to the emperor saying, thank you for being my friend. We had some good laughs. You are such a great emperor. Here's the elixir of immortality so that you can be the emperor forever. And I'm leaving. Bye. Have a nice day. So she goes back, returns to the moon. The letter and the pot of the elixir of immortality are taken to the emperor, and he's like, oh, I can't live without her. Certainly not forever. So I'll be a good emperor for the rest of my days. But go ahead, and here's a love letter that I'm writing to her. please take this and the elixir of immortality to the top of the highest mountain and set fire to them, where that fire will burn forever and forever carry the word of my love up to the moon, so where she always knows of it. And so the men, the soldiers, carry the letter up. They set fire to the elixir of immortality and to the letter, and so ends our story today. So this does several things. I mean, one, it's a fun story, as you know, reference. It sounds like Thumbelina, it sounds like Cinderella, sounds like other things that you've heard. And two, the Princess of the Moon thinks the emperor is a good emperor. So there's a little bit of political vibe to that as well. And some of you have called this out already. But, I'm sorry, I want to mention real quick about Fuji-san. Fuji is, at the time that this story was originally being told, was still an active volcano. So this also explained why there was smoke forever rising from this mountain. So it was another way to just kind of slip a little explanation, a little natural phenomena explanation in there. So anyway, I've got some info up here on the Ateji of Fuji-san, but there we go. So one of the translations that you could do for Fuji is you can be connected to this story. So we'll play that. There we go. So anyway, where I was going with, yes, a princess from the Moon Kingdom sent to Earth to escape to celestial war, shining golden hair. The Prince of Earth loves her. Hey guys, we all know this story, right? This is the Sailor Moon. Sailor Moon was a retelling of this. And the thing was, in Japan, this was not even a secret that this was a retelling. It was very, very blatant. But that didn't get carried over into the US because the US audiences weren't as familiar with the story. So, but this is the princess story in Japan, in the same way that, everybody's got our Cinderella story in the US. Kagehime is the princess story. Even Sanrio's in on it with Hello Kitty. If you've played the video game Okami, and Kaguya is, as seen here, is something resembling a Jini Hitoi. It's a simplified Jini Hitoi outfit, and she's in her rocket-powered bamboo. That's all references to that original Kaguya Hime story. So, Winter Bunny says lots of things didn't carry over in the Sailor Moon, bringing Sailor Moon to the American audiences. Yes. And actually, for more on that, tune in to our Phantom Thief presentation this afternoon, and that talks about other things that didn't make it. So, okay, let's talk about the Sayuki legend, and this is something that I could spend several hours on just on its own. So we're going to do it in 10 minutes. Yeah, and but this is the most popular folktale on the planet by terms of how many people know about it. So it's actually not that well known in, again, US and Canada, that kind of places, but so much of what we import and watch has references to it. So you're going to get a lot more jokes now if we talk a little bit about Sayuki. So the interesting thing, Sayuki is loosely based on actual events. And yeah, Seeker, can you throw a Phantom Thief link into the chat for me, please? Thank you. So Sayuki is loosely based on historical events that were then novelized into something not at all historical. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the Sayuki legend is very much based in Indian and Chinese folklore that then was imported into Japan. So what was interesting is it's about Buddhism. It's about bringing Buddhist scriptures to China. So there's your Indian influence. The novel that these we kind of reinvented the historical historical account is a Chinese novel. And then by the time it hit Japan, it started getting some new interpretations. You'll still recognize all the fundamental Sayuki parts, but whereas in India and in China, it's much more a tale of Buddhist spirituality, and it's got a lot of theological meaning. It still does in Japan as well, but we got a little bit of extra flavor where there it becomes there's a little bit of tension between the Buddhist monk, Buddhism, and the Monkey King, the raw power of nature, kind of tied to Shinto. And there's a part where they work together, but there's a little tension, much like actually the cultural history of Japan. So so let's get in and talk about what I just mentioned and make that make sense. So in actual history. Zhang Sang, and by the way, my Chinese is horrible, so I apologize for that in advance. I acknowledge it, it's bad. But he was a monk who went to India to collect Buddhist scriptures and bring them back to China. In 629, that actually happened. Then, much later, a novel was written of that account, of that event, and really made it exciting. So that's where we get the Monkey King character, who also comes out of trickster monkey character in Indian folklore and whatnot. We get the water predators. We get the magical horse. Then we get the dragons. We get all of that stuff coming out of the Chinese novel. So yeah, and hang on, guys. All the anime and manga tie-ins, not all of them, but we're gonna reference a lot of them. Wukong is another pronunciation of Son Goku, absolutely. So hold the phone. Here we go. The original Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z. The original Dragon Ball was loosely retelling this, and then that was before it got, and however many sequels it ended up with. And this was huge, obviously, and it was because it was tying into a story that people already knew, but telling it in a new way. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. I'm not, it's less nervous and more that I have a lot to do, and I feel like I lost a lot of time at the beginning with the tech issues, but I will try to slow down, and if you guys are having trouble hearing me, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to push a lot because I'm already moving really quickly. But thanks for calling me out. I'll check. Okay, Genso Maden Sayuki is Minakura Kazuya manga turned anime. And this is another retelling of this. This one's a lot of fun. There are so many retellings of this, and some of them are more accurate, more true to the novel than others. This one is one that's kind of fun and different because on the one hand, it actually follows the timeline and the story more closely than a lot of retellings. On the other hand, it's complete crack. They warn you in advance that it's complete crack with the title. So let me come over here. Oh, come on. Update. There we go. So Genso Maden Sayuki is literally record of the journey to the West, translated. You will notice, however, that these two titles that I've put up here are very slightly different. Because the Genso Maden Sayuki manga by Minakura Kazuya has a different character in the first kanji is a different character. So in the top line, that first character is the word for west. The bottom, it's the word for extreme. Both of them are pronounced sai. Japanese is an amazing language for punning, which I'll talk about in the next talk after this one, by the way. Actually, Storytime from Japanese History has a little section on puns in there. But so what you have here is they are both pronounced Sayuki, but one is Journey to the West and one is Journey to the Extreme. So they will give you a little bit of a heads up. And just in case that wasn't clear, let me jump backwards here. Here are our heroes and our antagonists, helpfully pictured from you. And if you look at the top right, you will notice that your Buddhist monk has a full head of hair and a gun. So yes, it's a little bit different in the retelling, but it is also a lot of fun. Yeah, yes, Journey to the West to the Extreme. Yes, and so I recommend this. It's late 90s, early aughts. It is absolutely 100% a guilty pleasure, but if you like guilty pleasures, it is a guilty pleasure. So things that you will see in pretty much every retelling of Sayuki. They will almost always have these elements in common. Son Goku's coronet and Noibo. The coronet is the almost looks like a crown. It's the ring around his head. In the story, that is what the Buddhist monk uses to control him when the monkey gets too chaotic, because he is literally an incarnate form of chaos. So when he gets a little too chaotic, the Buddhist monk will chant and tighten that, and it will compel him via pain to behave. So that's where you get a little bit of tension between the two characters. The Noibo is his expanding staff, usually pictured as red with gold finials. That was originally a pillar in the palace, the undersea palace of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. It weighs about 17,000 pounds. And Monkey went down and was like, oh, hey, I like your house. I think I'll take it. And that's one version of the story. Another one, he's set up. But anyway, the point is the staff is changing in shape and size according to what he needs. So it will shrink down and he will store it in his ear, and then he will pull it out, plant it, and have it grow, and he can rise up on something. You'll see that in almost all the retellings that will have that, and it is almost always red and gold. The shagojo or sagojo, depending on your version, will always have that shakujo with the staff and the curved blade, the monk's spade. The Sanzo priest is usually pictured in traditional garb, and if live action, is almost always played by a female. So just like if you look at the Victorian pantos and the roles of the principal boys, which were always women, for various cultural reasons, in here the Sanzo is usually played by a female, and that is to indicate the purity of the Buddhist monk. And then so those things will almost always be in all of the retellings. So you'll be able to find those constants across the board. But some of your retellings get pretty varied outside of that. And they'll emphasize, they'll only take, and to be fair, the novel's huge. Like there's a lot of material. I don't know of any of the retellings that cover all of it. It might be there. I just am not coming up with it. But you get some pretty exciting ones. Like as I mentioned, that Journey to the West that became Journey to the Extreme. You'll see them there on the right. On the left, you've got Sanzo, the monk. There's the Monkey King just over his left shoulder, so just to his right in the image. The White Horse, which was a dragon who had to become a horse to serve the monk after he kind of ate some people. And the pig there is Chohakai, who was such a womanizer that he literally became kind of a pig yokai. Shagojo's in the back with his curved, you can see the curved blade, Shakujo. Excuse me. On the right, you'll see the Minakura of Kazuya version, and they are in a World War II era Jeep. That is because a white dragon named Jeep transforms into a Jeep, and that's how they get around. So, there is a lot of fun that's going on there. I will say that again, for being as crack as the Minakura Kazuya version is, they have a lot of fun with it. Like Sanzo has a gold card that he uses to pay for everything. One of my favorite stupid puns in there is they encounter some people who are using highly powerful automated weapons to hunt down yokai. Ma being the word for evil, Shin being the word for death. These are evil killing guns, so they are Ma Shin guns. All right, guys. So there we go. Okay. Yes, that's probably why Bulma is holding the Sanzo role in Dragon Ball, as they needed a female character to do that. That is most likely a low-key reference to that. Yes. Okay. So let's move on. And when I say everybody does Sayuki versions, I mean everybody does Sayuki versions, whether they are overt retellings or subtle references. There are so many of these. Some of them are prettier than others. Some of them are not as pretty, but there are a lot of Sayuki retellings, including that we got to Armored God War Monkey King, Armored War God Monkey King. I don't know, but it came out the same year that Iron Man did. Looked a little familiar. And then we have this. I don't know if you guys would recognize this. But if anybody remembers the film Forbidden Kingdom, it was 2008 movie. It had Jet Li and Jackie Chan. It should have been amazing. And it utterly flopped in the US. And the reason it utterly flopped in the US is it is a side story stuck inside of the Monkey King legend. And if you're looking at this from left to right, we have, Jet Li, we have Jackie Chan, we have some white kid from California, Gary Stu, who's stuck in this Monkey King retelling. And because American audiences didn't know the Monkey King, the having a side story to the Monkey King really didn't play well here. So yeah, there we go. Okay. And Alakazam the Great. This is great, and I think it's still streaming. If you guys want to pick up a viewing of it, so this was great. They took an animated version of the Monkey King and revoiced it to release in the West for an audience they knew. Like this was 1960 something. I don't remember offhand. But they knew their audience wasn't going to know the Monkey King story, so they didn't even try. But this has an amazing cast. It's got voices by Sterling Holloway, Jonathan Winters, Frankie Avalon sings in this. But anyway, I copied the description here because I have to share this with you guys. He bullies the Monkey King. Monkey bullies the human wizard Merlin into teaching him magic, and then challenges Amo, the king of the heavens. Amo, of course, easily defeats and imprisons him, and then forces him to earn penance by accompanying his son, Prince Amat, on a pilgrimage. During their journey, they fight and defeat various ogres, some of whom then become allies. The story culminates with a battle against the bull demon, King Gruesome, who has captured the prince, and everyone lives happily ever after. That is, like, if you know the Sayuki story, you can kind of get, okay, he challenges the king of the heavens. That's because Monkey was a total jerk up in heaven and actually got stuck in a mountain for 500 years because he picked a fight with Buddha, and that didn't go well. And, he's forced to earn penance by accompanying the monk on a pilgrimage. Okay, this is true. So you can see where they're going, but if you're watching this, it's great to watch with the sound off because you know exactly what's going on. Then you turn the sound on and you're like, what? So it's a lot of fun with that. They will say the thing they got closest, the bull demon, King Gruesome at the end. King Gruesome is pretty good because Gyumao is the demon bull king. Evil bull king is usually translated demon bull king. So there we go. Yeah. Okay. So this is like Samurai Pizza Cats. Yeah, it's special. Okay. I will mention Monkey was it is the 1970s. You're a child in the UK. It's Saturday morning. You go down, you fill your bowl full of sugar frosted Wheatie bombs. And when you're completely sugared up, you turn on the television where the BBC had picked up this show, again, knowing that it wasn't going to be really culturally familiar to their audience, but it was cheap, and cheap counts for a lot. And so this is where Monkey comes from. And Monkey is pretty decent, and you can actually still find it online, and it's got an amazing cult following. I was doing this talk in New Zealand back when we could still travel, and every time I talk about this, I have to explain what Monkey is. But I was doing this talk in New Zealand at a convention, and I put up the picture, and everybody's like, oh, Monkey, because they had it coming in from the BBC when they were kids. So there we go. So I want to play the opening of Monkey for you because you need to appreciate this, and it's actually a fun show and it's a fun opening, but you need to appreciate this opening in the way that I do. So here we go. If you will play, come on. And I really, really hope the audio is working. No audio? Oh, no. No. Okay, hold on. Guys, like, this is sweet, sweet opening theme disco about Japanese folklore. Like, we need this audio. I'm going to try one more time, and if it doesn't work, I will sing it for you. Is audio happening? Oh no, is it not going? Oh. All right. This is the danger that I shouldn't joke. I'm gonna get stuck into this. Okay. All right. Oh, thanks, Winter Bunny. I'm gonna do a brief interpretation, and then Winter Bunny just threw up a YouTube link to the actual opening. So, what it is it's a super brief recap of of where monkey came from, which is basically all the chaotic energy of the universe became concreted into one stone egg, which then hatched. And oh, come on, let me see if I can time this correctly. Okay, egg became magically fertile, and the elements of nature worked upon the egg until it hatched. And all this is going on while the egg is rolling up the hill. Okay, I gotta get this timing right. And then the nature of monkey was irrepressible. All right, there we go. And so then we have our monkey opening with some sweet, sweet disco, which I believe goes something like, born from an egg on the mountaintop, funkiest monkey that ever popped. Yeah, those lyrics, man. He knew every magic trick under the sun to tease the gods and everyone and have some fun. I can't believe I've done this presentation enough that I know all of these. Monkey magic, monkey magic, monkey magic, monkey. Okay, that's enough of that. All right. Anyway, look it up at some point. It's great. It's actually a good show. And I believe the closing credits, if I'm remembering correctly, the closing credits charted as, I'm totally blanking. But it was a song I knew from history because they charted in the 70s. Anyway, okay. Yeah, high quality content. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you never know what you're signing up for. I am a little sad that means that we're not going to have audio for the other things. However, this is the Dragon Ball opening that normally would have a Dragon Ball theme song with it. But I will just go through and talk to you about how you're going to see the various aspects of the Sayuki legend here, even in this very brief Dragon Ball opening. So we have Goku playing the role of Goku, the Monkey King. Dragon Balls are a little less key, but there's his red Noibo. You'll see him, I believe he's standing on it here shortly. The flying cloud. Goku has a flying cloud in the original story. Goku's ridiculously overpowered in the original story. Let's just be honest, like that's how that works. There's your lecherous pig character. Chohakai was a womanizer in the original. And so you've just got all of that. Here's your water predator, usually portrayed these days as a kappa, but we'll talk about that as we go. And so, yeah, so we're going to move on because we got places to go. This is the opening to the Minakura Kazuya anime adaptation from her manga. That's the one that's the Journey to the Extreme pun. And this is so late 90s, it hurts and I love it. So now you know, but there you go. And so that's your Buddhist monk. So you can tell this is a little bit different. But yeah, without sound, this is not nearly as exciting. So let's move on. New Legend of Monkey just came out in 2018. I see what they were trying to do. I'm not a huge fan of it, but you know, it's not the worst. So not by no means is the worst adaptation out there. So just, you know, be aware that that's out there. And I believe it was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but you may be able to pick it up there, for a bit. And, okay. And, Winter Bunny's got me covered with all the openings. Thank you. All right, come on. There we go. And then, this is, at Okunuin, which is a huge, Buddhist cemetery at Koyasan, which is one of the most important cultural sites in Buddhism in Japan. It's where, esoteric Buddhism came and was established in Japan, in a mountain community. And there's a massive grave, and there's more than 250,000 monuments there, all kinds of really interesting things there. But right near there, just outside, it took this photo, and it's a sign warning people not to idle their cars to limit exhaust fumes, which is great. But I love that it's the Journey to the West characters who are warned not to idle their cars, just because, again, this is such a cultural thing. There we go. Okay, so let's talk through some of the most common yokai you're likely to see and how the translations are more or less accurate. So let's jump into here. So first of all, the word kami is very confusing. So it can be translated a number of different ways. So which means sometimes it's translated well and sometimes it's not translated well. But what I'm going to tell you is kami, if you just think of the word spirit, that's probably the easiest way to bring it over. So in Shinto, for example, everything has a patron spirit. Literally everything. There is a spiritual form of literally anything you can think of. And so, that 8 million that you see on the screen, that's a stand-in for a very large number. It's not precisely 8 million. There are just millions of spirits because everything has a representative spirit, which is why it's important to be cognizant and be kind and be respectful, because everything has a representative spirit. If we were in a convention center at this time and we were all sitting on ugly padded convention center chairs on ugly convention center carpet, there would be a spirit of convention center chairs somewhere that we should be respectful to. My favorite way it's mistranslated is when Westerners just say, "Oh, commie," or "commie, damn it." Yeah, guys, just simmer down, fanfic writers, please don't. Okay. So what this means is that because anything can become a spirit, either starts as one or can become one, there is an anime that references this, Kami-sama wa Chugakase, which is literally God is a middle school student, where this girl wakes up one day and she has become the patron spirit, if you will, of representing middle school students. So now she has to balance this. The story is about her balancing her life with her new duties as a kami and all of that. So we are going to see a brief clip. Oh, no, we're not. Yes, we are. It's got subtitles. We're going to see it. Just pretend that it's got cute voices. Are you going to play? Come here. Come on. You going to play? All right. So she goes into a beach house and meets all these objects, but they are the kami of the objects. I love the way the little kickboard guy talks. So these are the representative. Here's the kami of yakisoba, right? So literally, she's meeting the kami of everyone. Everything has a spirit. All right, move on. So yeah, getting into translations. But he said kami. Kami can be translated so many ways. Spirit, like I said, is a pretty safe one. When in doubt, just say spirit in your head. It can be an omnipotent deity, like the Judeo-Christian God. It can be a limited deity, like Thor or Apollo. It can mean Buddha. It can mean Jesus Christ. It can mean so many different things. Context really, really matters. So just be aware when you're reading something. Frequently, one of the things that I hope you can take out of this is that when you see a word in English, you can back translate it and maybe get a little bit of an idea of the better meaning rather than taking the literal English translation. You'll be able to go back and see what it's actually getting. So, okay. All right. Yokai, bakemono, mamono, ayakashi. These are all terms that refer to spirits, anything that's supernatural. So yokai, the easiest way to think of it is not human. So they can be physical, they could be a spectral creature, but think of them as something that is not human, something that's not in our typical human realm, our usual networking. Excuse me. It is important to realize that these terms are neutral terms. Yokai does not mean good. It does not mean bad. It means not a human. It is also important to realize that this is almost universally translated demon, which is very distinctly has a cultural connotation in English, which is, I'm not a big fan of this translation, as you're going to catch on. So yokai, here's the thing. I would say if you see the word demon, back translate it to yokai. If you must use an English word, use the word elf, because we have already screwed up the word elf in English. In English, we already have Legolas elves, we have Santa's elves, we have elves that live in trees and bake cookies. We have messed up elves. Elves have no meaning anymore because there's such a huge variety of it. So rather than translate it to demon, which definitely has a cultural connotation, I would say yokai is a perfectly fine word, but if we need it to be an English word, let's use the word elf. So shots fired. Well, oh, come on, I feel like we've messed up the word elf. Legolas and the Keebler elves, they're very, very distant cousins. So, okay. Sorry, I'm just checking into the chat briefly as I'm going. Kiwi's throwing out, I would say the word sprite. Sprite, it can be accurate in some contexts, but yokai can also be really huge, really powerful entities where sprite usually in our English language carries a smaller and somewhat cuter connotation. So just there we go. We'll get there. So as we move on, note that sometimes your source that you're consuming, your media, will have individual contextual rules. So for example, in the manga, later anime tactics, ayakashi are friendly and yokai are dangerous, but that is a rule that is brought in just in that world. It's not true across the board. So, okay. I'm now imagining a family reunion with Legolas and the Keebler elves. You know what? If somebody writes that, I want it. Send it to me. Please get me in. Yeah. So, yeah. Fae. Fae is another good term because fae can mean a number of things. It's got a fairly broad meaning spread. So that would be another option. So there we go. Okay. Natsume Yujincho is Natsume in the Book of Friends in English. And it is a great way to start, just getting a catalog of yokai. He inherits a book that's full of names of different yokai. And so the series follows him meeting all types of different yokai and returning their names to them. So you get to meet a new yokai every week. And so it's a great way to kind of work through a lot of them. So, okay. And then you'll see these everywhere because they are such a huge part of culture and tied closely into Shinto and tied closely into just the general folklore. You're going to see a lot of references to them. And the Great Yokai War. If anybody remembers Hammer films from our cultural past, and the delightfully sometimes campy, sometimes very campy, sometimes decent, like whatever. And they've just played on all of our folk and myth traditions and made some fun camp movies. There are those as well. The Great Yokai War being one of them. I have some that we'll see at the end. We'll see some trailers at the end, and they are, oh my gosh, really. Like at one point they forgot to put the body paint on the kappa. So sometimes he's green and sometimes he's just a dude with a shell and he's not painted. It's prime content. All right. But yokai appear throughout Japanese cultural history reference. So in the Heike Monogatari, which we'll talk about in the Japanese Storytime from Japanese History session, and it is a telling of the Genpei War that we pull most of our historical knowledge from, but like much of our Greek writers, our historical sources are also some fantasy sources. So he at one point talks about a giant disembodied face just appearing in the guy's room, and Taira Kiyomori stares it down because Taira Kiyomori is a badass, and it leaves. So, but that's just recorded in all of the history, with everything else that's going on. So we'll talk about that. Yes, the origins of certain Pokemon as yokai, as somebody mentioned in the chat. Absolutely. There's a phenomenal number of Pokemon that are just yokai with the serial numbers filed off. And so you can get that. Yeah. So pretty much everything, like why waste time inventing stuff when we can just pick up a yokai and have it do the heavy lifting for us? So that happens a lot in media. So, all right, let's talk about ghosts. Ghosts come in a variety of different flavors. So obake is one word for ghost. I like this old wood print because you can see kind of the evolution of prints turning into manga. There. So I like that. But, so we have different kinds of ghosts that will be referenced, and talk a little bit about it. And just like we would have spirits or haunts or poltergeists or apparitions or, just pick out, random words that we have for different types of ghosts that do different kinds of things. You can have some of that happening with Japanese ghosts as well. And so you might have one ghost that throws things around, and we call that a poltergeist. You might have something else that is replicating a life event, and that might be like the Flying Dutchman or something. And so you'll have references like that. Something I think is fun is in this old print that you see here, that you will see that the ghost has no hands or feet. And that is how ghosts are largely depicted today, with some reference for that. That is entirely due to Maruyama Okyo, who was the artist of this print and others, and he popularized the image of the ghost without hands or feet so that the ghost was not interacting with the world. That was just the kind of the visual shorthand. And so we, just like it became such a popular interpretation that it kind of rewrote the culture. So the Western analog to that would be if I ask you to picture Santa, to get an image of Santa in your head, he's most likely wearing red. And that is due entirely to one artist. Haddon Sundblom was hired by the Coca-Cola company to do a lot of Santa-related Coke ads and put Santa in Coca-Cola red. And they were such a popular series of ads that it basically rewrote our cultural interpretation of Santa as he is in red. So sometimes you can get just a small, one person can make a massive change in how we interpret things. So anyway, because of Okyo's versions of the ghosts without hands or feet, even today, here's Detective Conan being a smart alecky little kid as he does. He's like, he's not a ghost, he's got feet. Because, they were talking about somebody being, potentially being a ghost, and it was facetious in the show, but he's pulling out, no, he's got feet, he can't be a ghost. So that sort of thing. We're going to talk about the most famous ghost. There's several famous ghosts, but this is the most famous one, and it's probably the one that you've seen without knowing it necessarily. So this is Oiwa from a play called Yotsuya Kaidan, and the play allegedly based on true events. Sort of. So there really was an Oiwa historically. The play really was based on a samurai deciding that his wife and his servant were having an affair. Unclear whether or not they were, but he decided that they were. So content warning, I guess. So he nailed each of them to opposite sides of a door and threw them into the river so that one could be on one side up or the other could be up. They couldn't both be up. And so way to handle that, dude. Anyways, this got turned into a play. And with Oiwa being our title character, who is the loving and dedicated wife of a man who decides he wants another woman. And so he and the other woman plot to kill Oiwa. They poison some face cream. It does not kill her, but it does disfigure her. So if you see in the images there, she is always pictured with one eye messed up, and it will vary how that is portrayed, but it was always played with one eye. Because he didn't get, because she didn't die, she just got disfigured. He actually goes to somebody else, asks him to rape his wife so that he can divorce her. I mean, it's just like, it's a pile of, really great people going on, but it's one of the most famous ghost stories because she does at some point die. And then she gets to haunt him. So we're all happy that she gets her revenge. So the image that you see on the left is a print from Hokusai, Katsushika Hokusai, who you probably know is doing The Great Wave and quite a lot of other prints. Very, very famous artist. So he has an entire series out from this particular play. But this play was the Hamilton of its day. It launched, it had really great special effects that people hadn't seen before, had a great story about horrible people doing bad things. And it ran, they kept extending it, they kept having to sell more tickets. And it was, again, the Hamilton of its day. So I have a video. It's not going to have sound. Hold on, there we go. I've got a video of the effects, but I want to mention, if you saw the movie The Ring, which was a remake of Ringu, and there were Oiwa references in that film. So if you saw The Ring, you actually were seeing Oiwa references, just third generation. But of course, by the time it got to The Ring, they weren't spelled out. But that super creepy eye thing that's going on, that's going back to Oiwa's disfigure eye. Tomoe, I see that, yes, the seminar will be on replay on both YouTube and Twitch. So yeah, come back and catch more. All right, I do want to show this. There's not going to be sound here, but that's okay. We don't need sound. This is in the Edo Tokyo Museum. This is, come on, please play for me. This is how the special effects were done. I do want to mention, people are like, wow, these special effects are really obvious. Like, people in the era must have been really stupid. No, this is showing you how they did them. Like, it is intended for you to see how the effects are done, not intended to fool you. So go ahead and watch. But one of the most famous things, this is the Hokusai print, was of her coming out of the lantern to haunt her husband. So this is how they did that effect of the lantern opening up and her coming out of it. And that you will find lots of woodblock prints of that moment, because apparently it was one that was very effective when the play was on stage. We have somebody get sucked into a shrine. And so this is how that they did that, pulling him back and into the shrine. Okay. It's kind of fun. And then they've got just various trapdoors and trick entries and that sort of thing. So the fun thing about Oiwa and this play is it developed something of a reputation, much like, quick check, we're not in a theater, Macbeth, in Western culture, where you do not say the name of the play in a theater unless you're performing it. It's always the Scottish play, right? So same thing here. It has some, come here guys. It has some associations with it. So one of the things that is kind of required by tradition is, if you are going to produce that play, the cast and crew go to the grave of Oiwa and pay their respects, so that the production goes off without harm. I'm going to show you the grave in just a second, real quickly. This is Tamiya Inari Jinja. It's a shrine. It's a shrine to Inari. It's the Tamiya shrine to Inari, and it is actually the one where the historical Oiwa would have visited and worshipped. It has been rebuilt after a fire. This is how it looks today. There is a sign outside of it interpreting that, yes, this is the site for the historical Oiwa, but she was actually had a very happy marriage with her husband, and the play is largely fiction, so don't believe everything you read. It's also reputed to be one of the most haunted places in Tokyo. So you guys make your own decisions. Okay. But here is the actual grave for the historical Oiwa, or we're pretty sure, best we've got. And as I said, it's tradition to, if you're doing that play, to go and visit and pay your respects. And that tradition bled and over and expanded to, if you do something with yokai, if you are writing yokai stories or making yokai movies or something, then it's good to visit. So it's just kind of expanded. So as an author who writes stories with yokai, I was obligated to go ahead and make this visit while I was in Tokyo, and another author friend put me onto it and gave me the directions. So I'm wandering around the cemetery, and I'm looking for the grave, and I haven't been here before, and I'm alone in a very confusing cemetery, and I think I've got the right location, but I'm not 100% sure, and I want to double check the name, and I'm not quite got the kanji right. So I pulled out my handy dandy Google Translator and double checked the sign. So here, I just want to show you, this is 100% accurate, not doctored. This is what happened when I used my Google Live Translate. Your grave. So I was like, well, it's clearly the right spot, and I paid my respects and I left. So, but yeah, and all of the wooden markers that you will see around the grave, each of those represents a recent memorial service. So if you see a grave with a lot of wooden markers and they look fairly fresh, that's a grave that's receiving a lot of attention, a lot of memorial services. So it was very well taken care of even today. All right. Rei is another word for ghost, and I want to mention a couple of ghosts to be aware of. There's an anime called Natsuyuki Rendezvous. I think this is just a fun premise to play with. The woman in the middle of the image here owns a flower shop. She's a widow. She owns a flower shop. The guy on the left is her employee. He's crushing on her real hard. The guy on the right, who's in the air, is her dead husband. She can't see him. He can. Comedy ensues. So you'll notice that the dead husband is barefoot. So that's a nod toward he has feet, but he's not wearing shoes. He's not truly interacting with the world. So anyway, it's a fun thing. And minor spoiler alert, but I feel at this point, Evangelion has been around for a while. You either know it or you don't. But Neon Genesis Evangelion has a character named Rei. Her name is a little bit of a spoiler. It's some foreshadowing there. She is Zero. She is also a ghost. So there we go. Okay. Obake no Kyutaro. Oh my gosh. How do I do this? If there are any diabetics in the room, you may want to grab your insulin now. This is an extremely cutesy. So there's a phenomenon in culture that we take stuff that we are afraid of, and we write stories about how we fear it, and then we write stories about how we don't fear it. Okay. And it's a way to make us feel like we're better than the previous generations, or we've made progress. But we're always just recycling things. So that's why we used to have Dracula and he was scary, and now our vampires sparkle, right? So this is, the Western analog would be Casper the Friendly Ghost. And Japan had Obake no Kyutaro. Now, in this particular moment, our lack of audio may be a blessing, because it means your teeth will not rot as you sit and watch. They will not just rot in your mouth. The sheer amount of sugar overload in this is, there's a lot of cute here. There's some powerful lot of cute here. All right. Oh, I touched a nerve with the sparkly vampires. All right. Anyway, so Obake no Kyutaro is just an excessively cute ghost, and just you will see references to him still, because he was kind of a culturally significant thing. Okay, Mononoke mentioned earlier, ayakashi, yokai, those terms are neutral. Mononoke is not a neutral term. If you see the word mononoke, it is something supernatural that is contrary to humans, opposed to humans. So there is a definite connotation to Mononoke. And oh my gosh, this is one that would actually be good to have the audio here. I'm going to just tell you what this scene is. Shonen no Myoji is a fun story based on, let's back up. Abe no Seme was an onmyoji of the Heian era. And an onmyoji is a practitioner of onmyodo. Onmyodo and feng shui came out of the same root. Feng shui is probably better known here in the West. Onmyodo would still think of it as kind of a shamanic nature magic. Excuse me. That is a huge oversimplification, but we're on a time count, so that's what we're going to call that today. Onmyoji was a very respected position. There was actually an official court onmyoji. This is a person who would be in charge of calendars, be in charge of observing natural phenomena, be in charge then of also choosing fortunate dates or fortunate actions based on keeping the calendar and looking at natural phenomena. So if you open your fortune cookie today and you see that which are not Chinese culturally, but I'm shorthanding like mad here, and you get these are your lucky numbers. Okay, those are throwing back very loosely to feng shui, and onmyodo and feng shui are related if you go back far enough. So with that extremely condensed recap, Abe no Seme is a phenomenally famous onmyoji of the Heian era, to the point where he has been mythologized way beyond the historical figure. So probably the closest thing that we could say in the Western culture like this would be Merlin. There probably was a historical Merlin. It probably has nothing to do with the character Merlin that you see in film and in books. Okay, so Abe no Seme, very, very famous, very, very important. This is Shonen no Myoji, boy onmyoji. This is his grandson, growing up and learning Omyodo. So that's the premise of this show here. He has met this cute little critter that you see on the bottom of the screen. And in this scene, it's a back and forth with him. He's trying to get the critter's name. And the critter says, hey, names are really important. As an Omyoji, you know that. You can't just go out handing out your name. And he says, fine, then I'm going to call you a Mononoke. And the little creature's like, that's really rude. You can't call me a Mononoke. So he ends up nicknaming him Mokun, which is like a diminutive for Mononoke. And that's how he's known through part of the show because the kid doesn't have his real name. So what's really interesting is that this show was very, very briefly picked up by an American company who did not translate it in the way that it probably should have been translated. And so this entire scene is going back with, I'm going to call you a demon. I can't call you a demon. I'm a demon. And literally, it's the most confusing back and forth because they don't know how to translate Mononoke versus yokai versus whatever. They just use the word demon for everything, and it ends up making no sense. So the dub was a little whack. So I am so sorry that the video clips have no audio. I'm going to try really hard to figure out. It was working. I don't know what was going on there. I'm going to have to figure that out, but I don't want to make you guys wait while we run through that. So let's talk through some of the most famous yokai that you're going to be seeing in the anime and manga and film. These are the things that you will definitely come across. And again, there are thousands and thousands of yokai. These are the ones that you're definitely going to see. Okay. Oni are creatures that live in the mountains and are typically represented wearing animal furs and carrying clubs. They always have horns. How many horns and in what configuration those horns appear will vary, but that is they're always going to show up. They're usually translated as ogre. So if you see ogre, you can back translate to oni, and that's actually probably one of the closer translations that the traditional translations. One of the things that I point out is that these are, I'm going to point out the words that these are almost always translated as. This one's actually one that's fairly close. So there are female oni in traditional folklore. They are not cute or sexy. They are mean and they will eat you. Male oni, usually dangerous, occasionally on your side. Female oni, they will nom you down. So beware. So, okay, so there we go with the oni. And I just mentioned that on the right, that's an oni mask that you will see in no theater. No theater will frequently pull out masks to represent a particular emotion or action. So if they pull out an oni mask, they're pulling out something. And then I saw some really fascinating World War II footage, propaganda film out of Japan, just as we had propaganda films here, and they were representing the generals of. It was an animated piece, and the generals of the U.S. and UK, but they all had little oni horns to show that they were untrustworthy. Just small little horns drawn in. Kappa are really interesting because they're really fascinating creatures, and they actually haven't been around that long in the grand scheme of things. On the left, you'll see what we think is the earliest image, the earliest one we know about of a kappa, and that's only like the 1700s. So that's not that long ago compared to some of the stuff we're looking at. I can pull out, like, this has been around for 4,000 years. So that's fairly recent. Kappa are typically described as being child-sized. They can either be covered in hair or they will have a turtle shell. Covered in hair tends to be a little bit older depiction. The turtle shell tends to be a little more recent, but you will find mix and match on that. They may have a beak. They will almost always have a bald spot or an indentation on their head that needs to be kept wet. And again, there's another Hokusai woodcut. Hokusai did a tremendous number of yokai images and ghost images. He just did a tremendous number of images. And heads up, I believe, what am I saying? I'm pretty sure that this was listed as 12 and up on the content, but we're going to go into a little bit of PG territory here. So just be aware. Kappa today are traditionally depicted as very, very cute. Historically and traditionally, they are freaking terrifying, and we're going to talk about why. So, everybody, we're going someplace. If you look at this image, you will see the kappa on the right, and he's holding something that looks a little bit like, I don't know, a peach or soft serve or something. On the left, there's a guy face down in the dirt because he is super dead. What the kappa is holding is a shirikodama, which is a concretion of life energy. It is the tastiest part of the human because it is literally just eating solid life. Unfortunately, you store it at the base of your spine just above your pelvis. And so the fastest way to access it is from behind and up. And this is why toilets are super terrifying. And if you actually read some traditional kappa lore, it is horrifying. I will I don't know why women ever use the toilet, because there's also a lot of kappa and basically rape culture stories, with this. So you don't tend to see this a lot in modern kappa depictions. We've made them super cute. See what I said before about we take things we were afraid of and we cutify them. But if you go back in kappa lore, it's very, very terrifying very quickly. Kappa are traditionally extremely strong. There were stories about them just reaching out and yanking a horse into the river. Just really, really buff stuff. But you will see lots of representations of cute kappa today. Only one that I've seen that really pulled out the terrifying kappa that's from relatively recent years was a mini-series called Karas, in which there was supposed to be a haunted bathroom, and so a couple of news anchors, cute girls, news, doing the news, went in to explore the haunted bathroom, and so they're waving cucumbers, which are supposed to be a favorite food of kappa, and yelling, "Come out, kappa, come out, come out!" And the lights go out, and then the lights flash back on, and the walls are covered with blood and everything. Yeah, that's a throwback to the scary, scary toilet kappa stories. So, but as I mentioned, cucumber are a favorite food, which is why if you get a kappa roll at your favorite sushi place, it's a cucumber roll. On the left, that's a no swimming sign, but if you look closely near the bottom, you'll see there's a kappa in the water. It's just a quick cultural reference for don't swim here, it's dangerous, because kappa would totally eat you. Somebody says that there's some of the kappa lore in Gegege no Kitaro. Okay, I am not familiar with that one, so I will have to do some research. Also, death kappa. It's as good as it looks. Tokyo Tower's going down. There we go. And then kappa can enter the vernacular. Even a kappa can drown. Everybody can make a mistake. Even a skilled water predator can drown. Mentioned earlier, shagojo is usually depicted as a kappa today, but if you go, I just said they're kappa only a couple hundred years old, and the shagojo, the Sayuki story goes back, 1,000 years. Before it was always some form of water predator, and then in recent years that got locked into kappa. Curiously, in English, you will almost always see shagojo's name translated to Sandy in English, which is bizarre, but the original Chinese name can be very Chinese names can convey a lot in traditional Chinese names. So sand comprehending or sand contemplating purity. So because the word sand is there, that his name became Sandy, but that's a little, Sandy just doesn't quite sound as cool in the English translation. So there we go. That is Shagojo, who was a water predator who had eaten the previous 6 or 7 monks who had tried to go fetch the scriptures, and so he ended up accompanying our hero Sanzo. So hold on. Would I use a cucumber to distract or appease a kappa? Hold that thought. We're gonna get that. We're gonna get there. So I just want to show you very quickly in Journey to the West, which was a remake or kind of a sequel to the original Monkey Show, and it starred Katori Shingo, I think, Japanese comedian as Monkey. But in this fight scene, which had audio, but today you get me narrating. So So Monkey and Shagojo are fighting, and he whips off Shagojo's little headpiece, and he's all worried because his bald spot is exposed. And if he loses his water, that phenomenal strength that I mentioned, it only lasts as long as the top of their head is wet. So either it's a little bald spot or it's a little concave spot that needs to be kept filled. Either way, it needs to be kept wet. So I mentioned Natsume Eugene Cho earlier. Here's a clip from that. And this, in English, kappa is almost always translated either imp or turtle. In this particular case, they translated it turtle, which really doesn't make a lot of sense if you're watching this without the cultural knowledge that it's a kappa, because he can see it and the other humans around him cannot. And if it's a turtle that just happens to be invisible to some people, that's a very odd thing that makes no sense. So like, here's a girl watching him with no turtle there. So I think, translating it just as a turtle doesn't do a lot of good to the viewer, because it doesn't teach them anything. If anything, it's more confusing. But kappa are almost always translated either turtle or imp. So if you see turtle or imp, you can back translate to kappa. And I do want to share this one from School Rumble because it's beautiful. So everything you need to know about this, she has a crush on this guy. And so she's asked him, can you share my umbrella on the way home? So hold on. So he says he has a raincoat. So he doesn't want to share umbrella because he's got a raincoat. So she is sad. So she's going to totally suck up her courage, and she's going to ask him to share the umbrella, even if he's got a raincoat already, because it will make her happy. Pretty please, can we do this? All right. So what he actually said was, I don't want to go home under the umbrella with you because boku kappada. So I raincoat have, in Japanese, you can shrink sentences down. Kappa and kappa sound very, very, very close in Japanese. Kappa is the yokai that will eat you. Kappa is the loan word from the Portuguese capa, which we would say cape in English, that when the Portuguese merchants started interacting with Japan and they brought their capes with them, and then that became the cover-all word for raincoat. So I mentioned Japan is very, very available for punning. So he says, I don't need your umbrella. I have a raincoat. But he actually was a kappa. So if you've seen School Rumble, that's everything you need to know. Like, it makes sense. So, all right. So yes, so I see in the chat, there's some things back and forth about the wet spot. It's like Samson's hair. It's a weak spot. One of the recommended ways is to trick a kappa to bow to get away from it. Yes. So I said I would help you guys out. Here's the thing. Kappa are extremely polite. They're very, very much, they're strong and they will eat you, but they have a really good respect for the rules of etiquette. So if you meet a kappa, you should be very polite. And if you bow first and bow deeply. And then when the kappa, if you bow deeply, the kappa has to bow deeply to you as well. That will spill the water. Now you run, you get out of Dodge. Okay. There is another way to escape a kappa as well. The bowing one's pretty known. I'm going to show you one that's a little bit less known, but has historical authenticity to it, because this is an original 1800s wood block print that you can fart at a kappa to get away from it. So, hey, I don't make the rules. I'm just telling you, I have presented this to hundreds of people at this point, and not one of them has been killed by a kappa. So don't laugh. I'm saving lives. All right. So yeah, if you see imp or turtle, back translate to kappa. Okay. Let's talk about tengu. Tengu, which are almost always translated goblin, which makes perfect sense because tengu live in the mountains on treetops and goblin live undergrounds in mines. But other than that, exactly, no, I don't explain it either. They both have noses. That's my best theory on why Tengu get translated goblin. Anyway, Tengu are very much associated with nature and with protecting nature. They live in mountains. They live in treetops. And there's a species of, I think it's a cedar. I don't remember offhand. The tree, and it naturally grows out. The branch comes out from the trunk and does a little dip and then grows up again. And those are known as Tengu seats because that's where the Tengu would sit, right? Of course. So Tengu they will either have wings or they will have a fan with feathers on it to suggest feathers and wings. They will have a beak or they will have a long nose, which, again, a little bit of a visual reference too. So, so these are the visual indicators of a Tengu, and they're very much associated again with protecting nature on a mountain. So if maybe you start going in and strip mining or doing a big development, the Tengu might take action to slow you down. They are traditionally depicted as being in the clothing of a Yamabushi, which is a mountain priest. So they would have and then the staff or the feather fan to go with that. Okay. All right. And again, here's a no mask as being modeled by Conan for us. So in no, if someone is feeling a lot of protective jealousy or rage, they could pull out a Tengu mask to indicate that, just calling in that cultural reference there. But Tengu can be very pretty too. Here we go. Thanks, Tactics. So then I've got a clip for you from Tactics. This is when our main character unlocks, I guess, a Tengu who's been sealed away. And this is the Onikure Tengu, a Tengu so strong he can eat Oni. So in English, that became the ogre-eating goblin. And again, like goblins and Tengu don't really have that much in common, but I think a lot of this translation stuff started like the first time somebody did it, everybody just followed suit, regardless of how appropriate it was. So this is a lot of feathers and a very, very pretty Tengu. So they're not always that bishy. Tengu do come in other ways. Here is from Holic. So he's gonna get whacked up the side of a head. And these are our little biker punk Tengu who are flying. So there's your winged reference. There's clamp proportions for you. So they've got little wings and they've got their fans, which they use as weapons rather than to be pretty. And they're, you can't hear, but they're all rolling their R's and talking very much like punk yokai, do things. So yeah, anyway, they're very punk Tengu. All right, let's do Kitsune next, one that most people have heard of. Kitsune are a shape-shifting fox. There's actually quite a few shape-shifting yokai. I would just say Kitsune are the best known in the West. They come in two flavors, friendly and benevolent or very, very dangerous. Sometimes there's a middle ground. So. And that is different in, for example, traditional Korean folklore. The fox spirits were always dangerous. In Japanese, they can be friendly or dangerous. And of course, nowadays, there's been so much interchange and trope inversion and all of that anything goes. But I'm speaking in a much more traditional sense. Kitsune will have somewhere between 1 and 9 tails, and that depends on their age and their wisdom. By the time you hit 9 tails, they've lived at least 1,000 years. They will be white, silver, or gold, and they will be known as a heavenly fox because they are that buff. The foxes that you see in the field, again, going back to a Shinto view here, if you see a one-tailed fox in the field, that is no different than the Kitsune yokai. Right? Those are, that fox has a fox spirit. It's just that you're seeing a fox with only one tail because by the time they have 7 tails, you don't typically see them unless they want you to. Okay, so that's, okay, am I still here? Just knocked my microphone. Okay. And traditionally the foxes cannot say she. So if you think about, there's the traditional phone greeting on hello, moshi moshi, if I answer the phone in Japan. Now that is a multi-layer thing going on because mo, it's partly to say humbly. So I'm humbly greeting you. So mo is to speak humbly, to be humble. But the she is also a little quick slide in of, and I'm really myself. So, and it's not that people think there are shapeshifters on the phone. No, we're talking cultural throwbacks. We're talking references. So that's it's just a fun little way that still appears in life. Okay. All right. So these are, Inari is like Fushimi Inari, and like it's one of the deities that is worshipped in Shinto. She is the goddess of rice and everything associated with rice. So prosperity, business, trade, that sort of thing. And foxes are considered to be messengers and sacred to Inari. So you will see lots and lots and lots of foxes at Inari shrines. And they usually come in pairs, and one will hold a ball. That is the Hoshinotama. It's a little magical ball, literally a starstone or star jewel. And the other will hold a key, which is the key to the granaries of rice. So you'll see these in pairs. So I took these photos at Fushimi Inari in Kyoto. And I think, why she? Is it related to death? That's a great question. And the only thing that I've found that I'm comfortable saying this seems plausible as opposed to rando on the internet wrote this, right? So the only thing I will pull out is it has to do with the muzzle shape, because they're pointy faces. They can't say she. And okay, you know what? I'm here to tell you, as somebody who writes kitsune characters and knows just enough Japanese to be dangerous, I don't know how you can function in Japanese without saying she. So it's clearly not. My personal theory is that is a myth floated by the kitsune so that people are looking for the wrong things to identify them, because you have to be able to say she to be functional in Japanese. So that's my theory. Is it's a red herring. But yeah, it allegedly had something to do with the muzzle shape. Is the only explanation I found that had any credibility for me. So if anybody has something other than that, please send it to me. I would love to see it. Let's do a little, kitsune are tricksters, so they made up the false legend. That's my theory. There we go. Let's do, this is actually a Chinese film, but there's a lot of crossovers, tremendous Chinese influence on Japan, of course. So there's a lot of crossover. This is Jet Li in either The Sorcerer and the White Snake or The Emperor and the White Snake, depending on which way you saw it. It was released under both titles. So he has walked into this village in fantasy China where everybody is dead, and he's discovering that there are these creatures which are sucking the life out of people. And so he's going to have a little showdown with them. And I want to point out that the concept of a blood-sucking vampire is a Western concept, but an energy-sucking creature is very much an Asian concept. And I kind of need to apologize. My day job is in animal behavior, and I have to kind of avoid the screen every time I see this because the animal handling is so terrible. So I apologize if that bothers anyone else like it does me. But anyway, so here he has discovered these foxes who are taking the energy and killing the villagers. So he and his followers are going to have a little showdown, and they come out into this bamboo grove where they're going to fight. And it actually ends in something like a dance-off. So anyway, we're gonna actually stop here because here we go. But I just want you to let me stop it on the terrified, traumatized animal. Okay, I just wanted to share that energy-sucking concept with you guys, because that is the more traditional what we would call vampire. Which now there's been enough cultural crossover that you'll see blood-sucking vampires as well. And kitsune has a lot of visual shorthand referencing the kitsune things that you will see in anime and manga. So like a little tooth will appear, or if you're watching Rurouni Kenshin, every time Megumi's being tricksy, her little fox ears pop up. And that's just saying that a character is being tricksy or conniving or sly. So, okay. All right. And then, of course, Naruto has the nine-tail kitsune bound in him. So that is a pretty obvious reference there. And as I mentioned, by the time you get to be 9 tails, you're a tenko or a heavenly fox, and you're either extremely benevolent and a very good friend to have, or you're really, really bad news. And my advice is, if you meet a mad-tailed fox, just be super polite, because you don't know. And yeah, so you definitely, I think somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, there's some Pokemon that come out of these as well. So yeah, they're not always this cute, and I am so sad that we don't have audio, because I need you guys to, okay, your homework is, if you have not seen Ron, Kurosawa Aqua film, if you've not seen Ron, you need to see it. But I'm going to tell you about this scene because it's awesome. Okay, so Ron takes place during shogunate Japan, and it's all about power politics, and it's essentially a retelling of King Lear, but in Japan. The two characters you see on the screen, Kurogane is a samurai serving the daimyo. And then Kaede is the woman that you see. She is the daimyo's wife. The daimyo is sitting just to the right. You know what? Let me just play this and I'll narrate for you. Oh no, we have subs. We're good. Okay. Real quickly in the chat, Kitsune were not necessarily energy-sucking vampires. But they could be. They could be any number of things. So they were not necessarily bad. So Kurogane has been sent to cut off the head of Sue, who is another woman who got on Kaede's bad side. And I love, like, there's some subtle acting in here, where the daimyo, who is not down with this, is hanging onto his little support board and whatnot. So he's brought the head of the woman who was really innocent to turn into the daimyo, who's definitely not looking. Okay. And Kaede, who's like all about let me open up the head of my enemy. And then it turns out to be a fox head. And Kurogane is completely shocked. And Kurogane pulls up, oh my gosh, she was a shapeshifted fox. How was I to know? And so Kaede accuses him of just ripping the head off a shrine statue. And he's like, oh, wow, that fox is so clever. It turns itself to stone. And this is great. Yeah. So I love this scene. It's so good. I wish you could hear it. So Kaede calls him out, and he just completely pays the bluff. And he's like, oh no, foxes, they take human form. They go around deceiving people. They lead people into trouble. Let me tell you about this folklore about foxes leading rulers into trouble. And frequently, they will, here he's actually referencing Chinese stories about foxes who changed into human form and married a ruler or influenced a ruler. So he's pulling out existing stories here. Sorry, I'm somewhere caught between letting you read the subtitles and narrating. But I love that moment where he's like, oh, careful, they change into women to influence people. And the fox disappeared and we don't know where it was, but some people he settled nearby, and just happens to point at Kaede. And then he's like, thanks, peace out. And so he is off the hook because he didn't kill the woman who was innocent, and he didn't say no to his lord, which is a good way to have a very short career. And he got to hand off his warning about Kaede, and it was just a great scene. So there's your homework. Go watch that. Okay. Let's see, how are we doing for time? This is a Natsume Eugene show scene, but I'm going to pass it just so we can keep going, because we got a little bit of a late start. Let's talk next about tanuki. Tanuki are a animal that is indigenous to Japan and does not live anywhere else. So unlike, for example, there is trickster fox folklore all over the planet. But tanuki, that folklore is stayed a little bit more pure because there's not the interchange from other places, because nobody else has a tanuki. Now, a tanuki is neither a raccoon nor a dog, so of course in English we call it a raccoon dog. Sometimes in English we just call it a raccoon, which makes no sense because it is not a raccoon either. It is a tanuki. That is what it's called. That is its name. It's not any harder to say than raccoon, so okay. But it has very, very Japanese characteristics. Tanuki are very much associated with a strong sense of Bushido because there's no competing folklore coming in from anywhere else. Tanuki are another shape-shifting yokai, very particularly known for their shape-shifting. And there's a fun story, a traditional story about a tanuki that changes itself into a teapot. Oh yeah, wait for the puns. It's coming. Okay. The anatomy puns, they're here. Hang on. So, anyway, the tanuki changes itself into a teapot and, realizes after he gets purchased and set over a fire to boil water that that's not the most comfortable way to live, and ultimately ends up going to another person where he turns into a teapot and dances to earn money for this poor man and with the dancing teapot show. And anyway, so that's out there. It's a classic piece of tanuki lore. And because of that, tanuki teapots are a thing for potters to make, just as a reference to that particular story. So you'll see that a lot. In Heisei Tanuki Gassen Pampoko, which is a Studio Ghibli film about tanuki trying to defend their home from human development. And the tanuki are very much depicted with, very classic, very Japanese characteristics, very, very samurai, because again, they're it's a relatively pure mythology because nobody else is doing tanuki lore to come and blend with that. If you have watched Naruto, you know that there is a thing sealed inside Gaara. He's not just heavy into the emo liner. It's because he has a tanuki inside of him. That is not how I would usually picture a tanuki, but hey, I'm not in charge. And then you'll get tanuki as character references. Again, they are very sly. They're very sneaky. They're shapeshifty. They're not necessarily bad, but they will happily trick you just for the fun of it. So that's a thing to be aware of. And hey guys, we're back going heading again into the over 12 territory. So hold that thought. Tanuki are known culturally for a very special anatomy reference. And if you look at statues of tanuki or references to tanuki, you'll notice that they are extraordinarily well equipped. Tanuki are traditionally depicted with absolutely ginormous scrotum. Now, the actual animal is not this disproportionate. Okay, this is a cultural reference, not a biological reference. So the best origin of this that we have was traced back to the metal workers in Kanazawa Prefecture, and as they were working with gold to make gold leaf, they would wrap the nuggets of gold and then pound them so that you didn't get the hammer marks, but you could flatten it out. It's the same as you would wrap and pound anything else. And they were using tanuki skin and then tanuki scrota for this. And because you could pound gold out so thin, and because the skin was flexible and strong, they would make jokes that you could take a single nugget of gold and pound it out to 8 tatami mats, which is kind of a standard square footage measure. And so then we get kin no tama is a ball of gold, kin gold tama ball. Kintama is slang for testicles. So you can see how fast that linked in. So then it became, you can pound the gold out very large, you can pound the scrotum out very large. Well, they have huge balls, and it just went from there. And that is, yes, if you heard me say Gintama by accident, it's because Gintama is playing off Kintama, which is, yeah. Anyway, where we're going with, I'm about to ruin your childhood. Sorry guys, it's Gen Con, it's gaming, but I have some game references in here. It's not a raccoon suit that Mario is wearing. And so when I was talking about this one point, and Kyle looks at me, he's like, wait a minute, when Mario was shooting balls at people. I'm like, yeah, sorry. Okay, it's gone. But I will say that tanuki using balls offensively has a long and glorious history. So yeah, good company here. Sorry, Mario fans. But I do want to share with you a few prints of tanuki using their anatomy in innovative ways, because it was such a ridiculously popular subject for woodblock prints. Remember what I said earlier about folklore was fun and people were bored, and this is what we did. So a roku kubi, if it's another yokai. It's a woman with an extremely long neck who would, kind of sail off and use her long neck to peek into upper floors and all kinds of things. So here on the lower left, you'll see a tanuki faking a roku kubi, by tying eyes onto himself. The one on the top right, though, is one of my favorites, and it's a freak show where all the tanuki are coming to see the guy with a weird, tiny, what we would consider normalized set. So yeah, there's a kage style of print where they would show you kage as shadow. So they would show you a shadow and then you would guess what was making it, which would never be what it looked like. So here on the left, we see the shadow, which is looks like a stone lantern. But then when we see it's actually a guy here in horse stance. So these would be like 2-part, sets to play with. And so one of them is the set of 3 koi, is what it appears to be in shadow, but then we see that it's actually some tanuki beating up a hunter. So there we go. Guys, I'm just like, they go fishing with them. It's great. Okay, so we're going to get out of this because look, there's a catfish on the right, and we are now going to talk about catfish. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to go back to the grown-up room. Okay, it's like Christine in the comments. I knew about the huge balls. Woodblock depictions are nuts, guys. I did not even show you everything. Like, there's a line I didn't cross. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. The Who's That Pokemon is a reference to the Kage. Good call, Mary. Yeah. Okay. Namazu is a giant catfish that was associated with the cause of earthquakes. Previously, there were dragons caused earthquakes, which was still a water reference because Asian dragons are water creatures. And then in the late 18th century, Namazu became the cause of earthquakes. So in this particular print, we see Kashima, who's a deity, is pinning a Namazu with a rock and lecturing a group of smaller catfishes who are representing smaller earthquakes. And the catfishes in there are explaining that they've been causing the earthquakes because they're jealous because other fishes taste better and get used more in cooking. So there we go. All right. So you'll see Namazu pulled out for earthquakes at various historical references. There's a huge earthquake in Edo in 1855. It killed thousands of people, absolutely destroyed the city. So on the left, you will see Namazu in his penance committing seppuku. But if you look closely, and I don't know if you guys are able to see it on the screen, what's spilling out of him is not intestines, but money, because that's representing opportunity and growth with the destruction of the city. And if that sounds a little weird, look at the print on the right where you have all the angry people who are mobbing the fish who has, again, destroyed the city. But coming, if you look in the top left of I'm pointing, like that's very helpful. Good job, Laura. If you look in the top left of the print, you can see craftsmen running to the fish's aid because they are going to get so rich helping to rebuild the city. So it's related to redistribution of wealth and creating opportunity. So, okay. Dragons are pretty well known. But again, they are water creatures in traditional Asian mythology, not fire creatures. Today, you can find fire dragons because, of course, there has been crossover. But traditionally, they are depicted as water creatures. And dragons show up in, oh my gosh, so many anime, manga, film. Of course, there's all those references there. Dragon King of the Western Sea, Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, and I've referenced that we saw in Dragon King of the Western Sea. I believe is the father of the dragon that Sanzo rides as a horse. I would have to double check that. I don't remember that offhand. But Dragon King of the Eastern Sea is where Goku pulled his pillar out and got his Noibo. So you'll see that. And I mentioned that in the Minakura Kazuya version, the dragon is a cute white dragon named Jeep who turns into a Jeep. That's him when he looks like a dragon instead of like a World War II Jeep. Fun fact, if you give tiny little Hakudu, white dragon, if you give Hakudu a bunch of sake the night before, in the morning, the Jeep won't start. So, okay. And then, of course, in Spirited Away, we have dragons, and so aren't some dragons evil is a question. Yeah, there's certain, like, dragons come in a variety of flavors. They might be benevolent, they might be evil, they might just be above and beyond your petty human concerns and working for their own things. So there's a lot of that. Yeah. And so Winter Bunny, I saw just posted in Fruits Basket, the dragon is a seahorse, and long ago there was an idea that seahorses were baby dragons. So that's where that comes from. Okay, 10-minute warning. Thank you, Seeker. All right. Okay, so and again, today we can get fire dragons even showing up in anime and manga and such, because we've had enough cultural exchange. But we still get like ice dragons in Bleach, and dragons, more dragons, and more Hokusai prints because he did such pretty things. There's a Chinese story, which of course is known in Japan because so much Chinese influence, of a school of koi who were swimming up to a river, and they reached a waterfall, and most of them turned around and swam downstream again, but one koi kept trying to climb the waterfall. And he's jumping and he's falling, he's jumping, he's falling, he's jumping, he's falling. And for 100 years, he tries to get up this freaking waterfall. And finally, after 100 years, he makes it to the top, where his perseverance is rewarded by being turned into a dragon to honor his dedication and his effort. And this is the reason. So you can see in the print, we have a koi, and he gets up to the top and he becomes a dragon. And this is the reason why Magikarp becomes a Gyarados. That's why. This is why knowing your historical and folklore makes you a better gamer. There we go. So I just want to share, they laughed at my splash, I laughed at their corpses. So Taote or Taotie, and I have no idea why the movie changed the name of the creature, not sure, but if you I started getting questions about this after the Great Wall, so I went ahead and threw a page in here, even though this is primarily a Chinese reference rather than Japanese. But these go back thousands and thousands of years. You can see the bronze. I took this picture from the bronze in a museum, and it's dated about 1000 BC. So they're devourers. I would say that our closest Western thing would be the Jotun from Norse lore, where they just exist to consume things. And what's interesting is it says it has a head but no body. When it eats people, it does not swallow them, but it harms them. So it's kind of an energy sucker as well. So these are just kind of terrible evil things that would just consume you. And they've been around for a long time, but they're not truly Japanese, so we're not spending a lot of time on them here. The Hyakkai Yagyo is the it's usually translated Night Parade of 100 Demons, which, again, hopefully at this point the word demon is raising your eyebrows. But it is a parade of yokai that would pass through the streets and through the forest and then go have a drinking party. And if you see them, either they will invite you to go with them and you will have the best alcohol you have ever had, or if you see them, they will immediately kill you. Hard to say. Take your chances. So no, not necessarily a death parade, more of just a yokai party to which you may or may not be welcome. So, all right. And I mentioned there are literally thousands of yokai, and there's no way we can cover them all. But I do want to mention the Makuragaishi because it's just kind of fun. So you're asleep, and the Makuragaishi crawls into your house, and he picks up your pillow, and he puts it at your feet, and then he leaves. That's what he does. So there's your explanation for why your pillow doesn't stay under your head all night. There you go. Nekomata and Bakeneko are yokai cats that are generally going to be portrayed as evil. You can recognize them because they have two tails. And as one thing that you'll see again and again is the idea that if you persist long enough or live long enough or persevere long enough, you will become the spirit entity rather than just your natural self. So that, like the koi becoming the dragon. And so there was an idea for, in some areas, it's sometimes, certainly not universal, that a cat which lasted long enough would become a bakeneko. And so if your cat got very old, its tail would fork and then it would try to kill you. So really sad things. Tsukumogami are household objects that have lasted long enough to become yokai. And it's an entire class of things that I think are just fascinating. So the one on the left is a biwa. which is a musical instrument, which has now become a biwa boku boku. And so it's usually depicted as aged and blind and wandering around, and it might play music for you. Seito Taisho on the right is one of my favorites. So Seito is an area known for making pottery or crockery. So it became a name for that pottery or crockery. And the exact same way that we have set the china on the table, because our china came from China. Okay. So Taisho is a military rank. So we're going to say roughly general. So all the broken pieces of crockery that you would throw away or toss under your house would come together, form this little guy, this little military guy who runs around your house at night protecting it. So you might hear the crockery scuttling around your house, and that is the Seito Taisho taking care of your house. And on the left is the Suzuri no Tamashi. That's an ink yokai, and it is depicting the Battle of Dan no Ura in this picture, which you'll hear about in the next session, because it has the inkstone has been used to record that, to retell that story so many times that the inkstone has taken on the story. So the ink now will rise up and just recreate that story. The Kyorinin is a yokai made up of books and scrolls and papers and texts and everything, and they come together and form this creature that goes around in search of new knowledge. So that's what you're seeing on the right. And I think I saw someone mention the karakasa in the chat as it went by. That's the one-legged umbrella, which hops around and is often depicted with its tongue hanging out, usually has one eye. And the bakezori is a zori, that's the woven grass sandal kind of thing. And it's a spirit, bake being a word that indicates a spirit creature. So that's a spirit zori. So, okay. And I'm going to see what's our time. You know what? We're so close on time. I'm just going to jump straight to here. And if you guys have a couple of questions to throw in the chat, do that. I will hit them very quickly. And then here's how we're going to happen, because in 3 minutes, we are starting story time from Japanese history. And so I am going to have to stop the stream and restart it to make the break for that. So if you're on Twitch, just stay right here. It will go away. It will come back. Everything will magically work out for you. If you're on YouTube, you're going to have to click the link for the new stream, because I need to start a new stream so other people can come in for it. So either way, that's how that will work out. And oh my gosh, so Tsukumagami Kashimasu is a sweet anime about a couple who run a rental shop and their best items are Tsukumagami. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out. I'm not familiar with that one. Thank you, Seeker, for putting the link for Storytime for Japanese History. I appreciate that. Thank you guys very much for coming. And I have just launched my new, brand spanking new Twitch channel. And so I'm going to be doing more stuff. If you guys want to give me a subscribe or follow on whichever platform you have to be watching, I would appreciate it. And you can keep up with all the things. And then I'm going to... the tagline for my Twitch stream is inaccurate. It's probably showing something from, I'm such a Twitch noob. It's probably something from my last stream. So, okay. So I'm going to cut the stream and then I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you guys. Have an awesome day. Wash your hands. I'll see you in a few.